Hey there. It is story time with Dr. Bird. I'm Dr. Bird, biblical scholar. I care very much about what people do with what they find in the Bible. And this month of June, I'm doing a little story time experiment where I am reading biblical passages. I've started in the book of Genesis, and I'm not sure if we'll even get all the way through the book of Genesis. And we're reading passages that have to do with sex, the relationship we call marriage, and encounters of physical violence and abuse that involve intimate body parts instead of calling it sexual assault, which I do not like to do because sex is good in my mind, assault is bad. I don't want to put those two together. So let's call it something else. So that's what we're doing. So, content warning, today is a story that involves, according to the narrative, a rape. And I might be skewered by some feminist biblical scholars on this one, but I am not certain that Dina is raped. So, putting that out there, I certainly understand if you do think she was. Okay, let's just be very clear about that. Not ever trying to deny when something horrific is talked about, or, that's never my intention. So I think it's more complicated than that is the thing. So that's why we're doing this, right? That's one of the reasons I'm doing this. So as with all other biblical passages so far that we've talked about, I am trying to focus on that element of it, of the story, even though there are lots of other things also going on that we could potentially talk about. A lot of people talk about all the other things, which is why I'm focusing in on this particular set of issues when I read. So we're going to read chapter 34 of Genesis, and I want to put out there for you to think about as we get into the story, right? Pay attention to things such as what activity does Dina have? Is she given lines to talk? What kind of autonomy does she seem to have over her own body? What's going on between the men? Because really, I think this is a setup for a throwdown between two groups of men. I'll just leave it at that for now. Okay. I'm going to try to read through and stop and talk when there's something important, because if I don't, I tend to forget to go back and touch on all the things. So we'll work on it. We'll pause as we go through. Okay. I care about what people do with these stories. That's why I'm doing this. This is not utter disrespect of these biblical stories. It's just the opposite. Okay. So Genesis chapter 34, I'm going to read the couple verses leading up to it because it's a nice lead into this. We skipped over chapters 31, 2, and 3 because that's all about Jacob and Esau, or Jacob and Laban, and all kinds of power struggles between them, and really interesting kind of deceiving machinations going on between family members, right? So again, I'm not a big fan of Jacob. I don't think I need to be, and I don't think anyone needs to be, but somehow we're actually supposed to come out on his side according to the storyline in some sort of eventual kind of way. So leading up, verse 18 of Genesis 33, Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way from Padan Aram, which is where he procured his cousins Leah and Rachel, and also the enslaved women that went along with them. And he camped before the city of Shechem. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the plot of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. God, the God of Israel, right? El Elohe Yisrael. Now, Dina, the daughter of Leah, right, the only daughter that's narrated, at least, being born to these women. And remember, Leah is the unloved of the two sister wives. So now Dina, the daughter of Leah, whom she had born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the region. When Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the region, saw her, he seized her and lay with her by force. And his soul was drawn to Dina, daughter of Jacob. Something doesn't align here in my mind. He loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this girl to be my woman." My translation says wife. Okay, let's just back up. Okay, like I said, I'm not trying to deny something horrific might be going on. Okay, um, so first of all, so the narrative suggests that Shechem just raped her. Okay, but then it also says his soul was drawn to her. See, this doesn't line up in my mind because rape is about force and power and punishment or humility, like an affront to someone. It's about being cruel. It's about some form of, punishment or assault. It is not about love. It is not about something beautiful and sensuous and enjoyable by both people, right? It is not. Okay? So, what's going on here? Because you don't get to have that a man rapes a person and then falls in love with them. You don't get that. I'm sorry, but you do not. That just isn't. The person writing the story doesn't know what they're talking about, is what goes through my mind every time I read this story, right? So which part is true, or which part is the made up part? His soul was drawn to her. He loved her and spoke tenderly to her. No, 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 no. This doesn't ever happen. So you either utterly misunderstand what happens when a person rapes another person, or you utterly misunderstand. Like, I don't even know how to get at it, but you don't get to have both of these things happening at the same scene. You just don't. Okay. So that's why the title on this one is "What Really Happened to Dina?" What's when the biblical storyline is actually misleading us. The biblical storyline does not support what would actually be taking place between humans. What do you do with that? How do we, aside from the fact that, well, just chalk it up to another thing on the list that's just irresponsible and just not, it's just not the way things go. Okay. But here's the thing. It's like the one child of Jacob who was a female is getting a story, right? And so there's a reason why people want to make a big deal out of this, I think. Dina, the daughter. But then here's the thing. Where does she ever get to have does she get so let's just keep reading because I'm pretty sure she's just a placeholder for a fight between the men, right? Okay. So according to the narrative, he rapes her, but then he also wants to have her as his woman or his wife. Now, Jacob heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter Dina. I just need to stop on that. Okay, not that he had raped her, not that he had assaulted her, not that he had taken her against her will and forced himself upon her, but defiled her. Do you see that the issue here is that women's bodies are property, or women's bodies are to be kept pure, and she is now defiled? It's not about the harm done to her. It's not about the emotional or physical or both, right? It's not about the harm done to her. It's about the fact that now she isn't worth as much. If Jacob wants to sell her to a man who wants to purchase her, she is defiled. She's been touched. She's not worth as much anymore. So if you ever hear someone today talking about people who've been raped as if there's something wrong with the person, now, since something has been done to them, something horrific like that has been done to them, I'd like to suggest that that's not true, but it's really fascinating to me the way this kind of a narrative underscores that misunderstanding about human bodies and worth and value. I understand, not from experience, but I understand that a person might feel that way and that they feel like they have been whatever language or you want to put on that. But it isn't actually true. You are not less of a person just because somebody has done something horrific to you. It feels that way. You have trauma to sort through that you may never, I don't know, right? I mean, they're two different things. And the external belief that there's something lesser about you because something has been done to you is something I would love to eradicate, because it's bad enough that you have to deal with the effect of it. There's nothing lesser about you, right? But that's a thing. That's a thing we're told. And that's a commentary. That's a cultural claim that I hear trotted out quite a bit. Okay. So now that Jacob heard, right? Okay. Now that Jacob heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter, Dina, now he heard it, but his sons were with his cattle in the field, so Jacob held his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him, just as the sons of Jacob came in from the field. When they heard of it, the men were indignant and very angry, because he had committed an outrage in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing ought not to be done. Very interesting, because all of a sudden we're not sure what it is he actually did. According to the narrative, did he actually lie with her, or did he force himself upon her? And what's the thing that ought not to be done? You ought not do that without purchasing her first. Again, this isn't about her. This isn't about any sort of feeling that Dina might have, any sort of emotional, physical desire, none of that. This isn't about her. It's about what she stands for, right? But Hamor, so the father of Shechem, spoke with them, saying, I'm going to see if there was, damaged goods, 90% off sale. Sorry. Sometimes these comments are really fun to just kind of, I don't normally watch while I'm doing this conversation, but it's a great point, right? She's not worth as much. 90% off should be marked down. Okay. Focus on the story. Hamor spoke to them, saying, the heart of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him. And the English translation here says in marriage, which that's not in there. I didn't look up the Hebrew ahead of time. My apologies, but please give her to him. Please let him purchase her. Let us exchange women. He says, make marriages with us. So the Hebrew is saying something like, let us give and take women amongst ourselves. Give your daughters to us and take our daughters for yourselves. You shall live with us, and the land shall be open to you. Live and trade in it and get property in it. So according to Hamor, nothing terrible went down. And I get that. Like, it's not like Shechem's going to tell him, I just went over and raped that girl. Now I want her for my own. Like, that's not going to happen. And so Hamor's just carrying on. The father's just carrying on business as you do, which is exchanging women is a way to kind of have positive relations between these neighboring people. I mean, that's one of the functions of marriage at this point in time. And in fact, was one of the functions of marriage, kind of still is in some parts of the world, right? Okay. So you shall live with us, and the land shall be open to you. Live and trade in it. We want you to prosper, because then we prosper too. And everybody, rising tides lift all boats, that kind of thing. Okay. Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, let me find favor with you, and whatever you say to me, I will give. Put the marriage present and gift as high as you like. So, and I will give whatever you ask of me. Only give me the girl to be my woman. My English says to be my wife. So many things here, right? So many things here. So again, a man who has forced himself upon a woman is not likely, right, to be acting this way. But so far we haven't heard anything from Dina, right? The sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully. Oh, that's a shocker, right? Because they've been watching their father do it their whole lives. They answered deceitfully because he had defiled their sister Dina. Again, he had defiled her, not which doesn't have anything to do with whether or not he forced her. He has simply inserted his penis into her vagina, and now she's defiled because of him. That's it. It's not about how she's actually been treated as a human being, whether or not this was something she engaged in willingly or not, right? It's not about that. So they said to them, "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we consent to you, that you will become as we are, and every male among you be circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves." That's very honest language. That's a very honest translation of what's going on. "And we will live among you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone." So when I did the research for the book, and I did talk about this section of Genesis in the book in the appropriate chapter, I did look at the Hebrew. It's just I didn't re-look at it again this morning before this going live. But it is language that is about giving and taking, and that is a way for people to have positive neighboring relationships as you give your women to each other, take each other's women. Right? It's not marriage. This is an honest look at marriage. Marriage is just taking and giving, and women don't have a say, and women are worth more if they haven't been penetrated yet. All of the things. Okay, so their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem. Apparently, they thought cutting off the tip of their penis was just a fine solution to the whole problem. They were fine to do without that. And the young man did not delay to do the thing because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. I'm holding back some of my comments right now. Now, he was the most honored of all his family. I mean, I can't help myself. Like, he was delighted with her. She was very attractive. Was she a good lay? Like, I don't know. Did she actually have some moves that made him happy? I don't know. Like, when they say that, I'm like, what do they mean when they say that a man is delighted with a woman that they've just had sex with? Like, I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means? I find it very curious. I'm very curious what that means. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, "These people are friendly with us. Let them live in the land and trade in it, for the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will they agree to live among us, to become one people, that every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock, their property, and all their animals be ours? Only let us agree with them, and they will live among us." I don't know. How many of you out there with penises are thinking that that's going to be the way it goes down? Oh, sure. No problem. Let's all just line up, do a little shoop, shoop, like, no problem. Let's get it done tomorrow. Line it up, got the little platform. Going to just, pull it out and throw it up there and just snip it off the end. Like, no problem. What? Even when I just say the word circumcision or castration in a classroom of young men and with young people in it of various bodily manifestations, people cringe just at saying the word. But I'm sure the entire town of men are going to be just fine with stepping up to have the end of their penis cut off, right? And all who went out of the city gate heeded Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. Okay. On the third day, when they were still in pain, that's so great, right? That's honest. Okay. It's not like, I'm sure they did have things for painkillers. They did have they did have understanding of different, plants and things. And anyway, on the third day, when they were still in pain, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, two of the older ones, Dina's brothers, took their swords and came against the city unawares and killed all the males. I decided to think about what I just said. And we'll come back to this. Let me finish reading this part and we'll come back to it. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword, and took Dina out of Shechem's house and went away. And the other sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city, because their sister had been defiled. They took their flocks and their herds, their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and in the field, all their wealth, all their little ones and their women, mine says wives, all that was in the houses, they captured and made their prey. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You've brought trouble on me by making me odious to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household." But they said, "Should our sister be treated like a whore?" Okay. Okay. So many things here. Can we where do we start on these last few verses? On the third day, two of Jacob's sons went out and killed all the men because a man had defiled their sister. Treating her like a whore does imply that she may or may not have been willing. But what I think is stunning is that I don't see where anyone asked her what went down. I don't see where she has any line whatsoever, actually. She does not have a line. She's just a placeholder for a fight between men. And Jacob doesn't get up in his sons' faces and say, "What the hell is wrong with you? Why would you kill a bunch of men?" No, he's just worried about his reputation. Do you see that? This isn't an honest, even his anger isn't at the right thing. "You've brought trouble on me." Not, "You're a bunch of assholes. What is wrong?" Or even more, whatever language you want to use for this. "Who are you? I don't know who brought you into the world that you would go out and do that to a bunch of people that we were trying to have positive relations with. What, why are they so deceptive?" Like, we could just come at this from so many angles. And at the end of the day, I don't really care. What I care about is that people do want to make a big deal over this. That's fine, because it's not clear what went down. She's traveling around, she's hanging about with the women in the region, she's getting to know everybody. And so Shechem sees her, and maybe they hit it off, maybe they didn't. But of course, Anita Diamant, back in the, was it late 80s, early 90s, wrote a book called The Red Tent, where she takes on the women's side of things, right? And she suggests that Dina and Shechem kind of hit it off and had a little fling. And so the fact that her brothers never even asked her about it, right, is all the more obvious in that in that playful, artistic, or just creative filling in the blanks, filling in the gaps between the narrative lines, and looking at the mother children relationship there. Since there were four women who brought all of these children into the world, they're all mothers to them, and all kinds of interesting things in terms of the women in their tents separate from the men, or women in separate tents when they're menstruating, and what that all leads to, and blah, blah, blah. It's really kind of an interesting read. But this isn't even about Dina, right? This isn't even about Dina. I do care about Dina. I do care about her. And I'm fond of suggesting that she probably was into him, and that her brothers just didn't like that. You know what I mean? I'm fond of considering that it may have been mutual, and they just didn't like that. I don't know. What do you all think? There's some people here. What do you all think? Was this a mutual thing, or was he forcing himself upon her? How do you make sense of it? What do you do with it? How do you decide what to do with it? What do you do with Jacob as a father in this story? Because I feel like he's lacking, significantly lacking. Um, does he ever go to Dina and talk to her about what went down? We don't know, right? It's not in the narrative. It's much like what we see several generations later when David has two of his children, his son and one of his daughters, right? One of his sons, um, they're from different mothers, uh, living under the same roof with David at the time, right? And so one of them rapes, very clearly rapes, like like just like yeah, rapes, and that one's much more honest, right? After Amnon rapes Tamar, um, uh, it's an honest reaction. He hates her and he get out of my sight right now that I've had you, basically. And David doesn't talk to either child, right? This is what I worry about. This is the stuff, right? Women's bodies are being abused and used, and nobody and nobody cares about that. But they act like they care. Or should our sister be treated this way? I'm like, really? Is that actually what you care about? That your sister was treated that way? Because I'm not sure that I believe you. So many biblical fathers, people we hold up as heroes, are absolutely trash fathers. Yes. Thank you. What she said, what they said. I don't know your pronouns. What she said, they said. And because they're fathers of the faith, they're patriarchs of these faith traditions, we can't critique them, or we can only critique them so far because nobody's perfect. Well, you know what? Bleep that. Like, fuck that. No, not if you're going to be, the head of the tribes of Israel from which all of these other monotheistic traditions, flow. Well, Abraham and the Muslims come from Ishmael, but anyway, you get my point. Yeah, so we've got two of the brothers feeling defensive of their daughter or their sister. Maybe they're really fond of Dina, and they heard that he raped her, and they just wanted to get back at him. Like, oh, on some level, okay, but killing the whole town, and then everybody comes along and doesn't seem to be too upset about it, right? Because they killed Hamor and his son with a short, and they take Dina out, and then the other ones come along and take everything. So they take everything, including the children and women who are left behind. Like, they slaughter all the men, take all the goods, everything out of the city becomes theirs. But Jacob turns around and he's only upset that the first two, Simeon and Levi, had given him a bad reputation. I don't know. Plundering the whole city might be a part of that bad reputation. Call me crazy, right? Taking all these women. Again, this becomes an issue of, right, captured. Women who are captured because of a battle that really didn't need to be a battle, but it was. You've brought trouble on me by making me odious. Yeah. We can talk about toxic masculinity if you want. We can talk about a lack of regulating our own emotions and not actually being able to talk about anything. I mean, this is all reactionary stuff, right? These examples are all reactionary. When I talk about what marriage in the Bible looks like, I'd like people to know that it's never entered into mutually. It's never built upon love. We might have a comment or two that says that Jacob loved Rachel, but based on what? He'd known her for 5 minutes. It does tell us that Isaac loved Rebecca. I'm okay with that on a certain level, but what does that mean? And in an ancient context, that might have been progressive, right? But we don't have any of these couples or families setting examples of listening, understanding, grasping what's going on from both perspectives. That's what we need today. We need examples of families and couples who talk to each other, who listen to each other, who are empathetic, who can hear another person's perspective. In particular, when it comes to people groups, we need to be able to have examples of working things out, not just going to swords over potential misunderstandings, much less these just massive slaughters, right? Why Why do we have to keep reading these stories? Why do we have to keep talking about these people? These are the heads of the tribes of Israel are doing this stuff. It's not just Simeon and Levi. It's also the others who go in and take everything. We don't want it to go to waste. Okay, well, okay, but can we let the women live on their own and like take care of it for themselves and figure it out? And maybe, I don't know. It just, it's just, there's, I don't, I actually have had some friends, say, well, where are the examples in scripture that talk about, that give us, the marriage, examples of relationships in the Bible that give us examples of understanding and being compassionate. And I have to laugh. And I'm not laughing with glee. I'm laughing with, oh my gosh, you really don't get it, do you? Nowhere in the Bible do we see couples talking to each other in any kind of a reasonable, working this out kind of a way. I mean, we've no idea what actually happened. I mean, again, I'm not thinking that this actually took place historically. My point is, this kind of thing probably took place between peoples, and we don't know. We don't get to hear her side. We don't get to hear anything from Dina. She's just a prop, she's just a prop. Okay. But we want to talk about, so if you want to see it that it was a rape, I'm okay with that too, right? If you think when it says that's what happened, okay, that's good, that's good. But still, the reaction should not have been by Simeon and Levi deceptively, right? The whole point of requiring that they be circumcised is just ridiculous. That's nonsense. They weren't going to stick around. They were moving through anyway. They weren't sticking around. All of it. It's just a bunch of deception. What else? What are people saying? At least we had someone else to blame when families arranged the marriage. Oh boy, does not say a single word. Exactly. What happens to her is recounted and characterized. Exactly. Characterized by her brothers. And we have no idea. And it almost doesn't matter, Okay. I'm gonna just say you turn to Wikipedia. I'm gonna comment on that just for the sake of commenting. I've had students in my online class. I'm certain they're using ChatGPT, something like that, something that far advanced, because they can't have a full sentence email exchange with me, but they're giving me this like graduate level responses on their homework. I can't prove it. I have to give them credit. Like, what? I have to give them credit for putting some things into ChatGPT. Okay, be careful. Like Wikipedia, there's so many reasons I could cite for why we need to be careful using Wikipedia in general. But when it comes to anything related to Bible religion, like up that about 3 or 4 degrees. But anyway, on his deathbed, Jacob curses Simeon and Levi's anger. According to the Midrash, Simeon were only 14. I'm not going to go there. I don't know what to do with Midrash, because it's just another layer of ancient male ideas about what was going on. I don't know how 13 and 14-year-olds could go around slaughtering an entire town of men, even if they were in pain. It was 2 or 3 days after. Like, I don't buy it. I think that the Midrash there is trying to defend Simeon and Levi, that they were too young to know what they were doing. Like, I don't buy it. I don't want to go there, and I don't want to, because I just don't buy it. It's still a bunch of ancient men's perspectives coming out of a very tribalistic, or maybe slightly less tribalistic worldview, but still like patriarchal. Sorry. Joseph and Dina had switched souls. Yeah, I find that very interesting. It gives us a different look why Dina was out with the women. As in Joseph switched souls or switched clothes. Anyway, okay. I think we need to be done for today. I don't want to just draw these out just to draw them out. I appreciate very much that there's some people here. I so much enjoy. Yes, media literacy is crucial. All that stuff when you're looking at stuff online. But I do think it's important to consider your sources, to consider that most of the biblical scholarship is even still being written by by white males, not entirely. We could do a little session where I just kind of promote a whole bunch of BIPOC scholars in biblical studies. I could do that once this kind of thing is done, if you'd like, because there are a lot of scholars out there who are writing and who are trying to make a difference in terms of the amount of putting scholarship out there that to kind of counter all the white male perspectives. And sometimes women also, even in biblical studies, especially in the Newer Testament, will still have a tendency to be positivistic with the scriptures, that with the writings, more positivistic than critical. And that, even though they're female, they are still often a part of a faith tradition, for instance. And so a full-on critique of the scripture might not be comfortable for them. There are some that it's absolutely comfortable for them to just full-on critique. But my point is, when you start looking at sources online, you really need to be careful, in my opinion, what you're going to trust, right? I just want to say that. I don't, you just need to be careful. Even when you're turning to biblical scholars who have made a pretty big dent in terms of being general, like scholars for a general audience, many of them are also still quite male in their orientation and thinking about things. I'm not going to name any names right now, but I've had exchanges with one of them in particular about this idea of what it means to bring a feminist critical thinking to the Bible and to the way we critique it as scholars. And I can just tell you that it's not in the wheelhouse for a lot of these guys who are bringing criticism to the Bible, but they're not like the perspectives of women and those who are marginalized is still not necessarily a part of what they're doing. They're bringing a really interesting critique, but I don't know how to say this without just kind of being inappropriate about, So anyway, look for sources, do what you're going to do. You're going to do what you're going to do anyway. I think I should do a session on biblical scholars whose work you can turn to and respect and whatever. Anyway. Yeah, I agree with you, Casey. I don't think that my definition of feminist isn't just about male-female, by the male-female dichotomy or binary. It's more about, my definition of feminist is multi-layered. So it's about humanity, what is, seeing humans as equals, also bringing in the political dynamic and how gender plays into the way politics play out, and therefore the way when it comes to critiquing biblical scriptures, what kinds of things were incorporated into the biblical writings because of politics and in reaction to politics or to protect people from the political elements. I bring in a level of what do these texts look like when they are engaged in human lives and communities. And so as a feminist, what that means to me is I'm going to critique all of the pieces of it in terms of how it plays out for people and who's benefiting and at whose cost. And so to me, it's just a way of saying, kind of a very, it's not just about men and women. It's about what's going on in these texts. There's a lot. There's a lot of, a social class element going on. There's a political element going on. And there's control of people psychologically and emotionally. Paul is really good at shaming and manipulating in his language. Do I see that because he's a man and I'm a woman? Or do I see that because I see that in how the rhetoric of that plays out and how that affects people? So I'm a feminist, and so I raise a question about that. He happens to be male, but he's a male that people have protected and defended for almost 2,000 years. So I think it's worth actually critiquing that. I don't care if I'm a female or not. Like, I just think you need to critique that, right? So for me, feminist is not, I do not think of humans as male or female. I don't think of humans that way. I think of us as we embody a really interesting spectrum of things, both genetically and in terms of our us being true to ourselves, what that looks like and how we behave, right? There's just a whole spectrum, wide range, as well as, sexual attraction or non-sexual attraction, but desires to be with people. Like I think all of who we are as humans is just all on a big spectrum or something, and not. So I think it's very complex. I think we are complex as humans. I think it's nice to be able to have space to try to acknowledge that and make room for that. And it is one of the reasons that I try to talk about sex and this relationship called marriage in the Bible, and that we call marriage when we see it in the Bible, and then the abuse of bodies. Because it is, for the most part in the Bible, it is based on this kind of binary, even though within the Bible there's representation beyond the binary. It tends to be talked about in those ways. And it has full on examples of all of the toxic masculinity that we talk about today, all of the, shaming and body shaming and gender shaming, right? Like if a man behaves like a woman, that's being shamed in scripture, all of that, like it's all in there. So maybe I should have said some of this about where I'm coming from up front. What a concept. And that would be helpful. So maybe I'll start next time with that, because that would be helpful for me to clarify for people, because I've had some misunderstandings, which makes sense to me. So anyway, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for being here. Yeah, you bet. Someone thanked me for discussing these inequalities and the negative effects they have on the world today. And I am absolutely. That's why I do that. Aisha Willis, are you the one who's the personal propagandist on Twitter? I think you might be. I was loving your tweets. Thank you for doing that. They just reminded me, I'm going to do this real quick. Really, just if you're interested. So you can pre-order the book, Marriage in the Bible, What Do the Texts Say? Through the publisher or through Amazon. It's now, that site is up and running. And it is in hardback first, because it's a general interest book. It's not just for biblical scholars, and it's not even just for people in religious communities. The book itself is written for a general audience. I open the introduction by referring to some of the legislation that's been laid out in this country in the last few years, in addition to the way LGBTQ plus folks are being targeted in various countries around the world. And so this conversation about marriage in the Bible actually applies not just to religious contexts or personal familial contexts, but it applies in legal contexts as well, political, because what people believe about what kind of sex is proper then has an impact on what kinds of marriages they will endorse or legislate as illegal. So what kind of sex is allowed is directly connected to what kinds of marriages are allowed legally in any context. So, and then when you get to the political context, you will hear people in various countries around the world vaguely pointing back to what the Bible says or what God ordained. And so this is an important conversation no matter where you are. So that's why the book itself is coming out in hardback, because they want it to be on library shelves, both public libraries and academic libraries. And so they need some coming out in hardback for that purpose. And then they'll go to paperback. So anyway, that's just a way of letting you know. If you are thrown by the price, understandable, but that's why. So just hang on. If you can't go with the hardback, just hang in there for a couple months. Hopefully we'll sell the hardback printing out, and then we'll move on to paperback. So thank you for that, Aisha. And I appreciate you all being here. I hope there's been something useful for you, because my intention is to help people have more honest conversations and to have something to help them to do that, and to have more honest conversations about what the Bible is and isn't saying. And so we'll be back tomorrow to do some more of this. Until then, thanks.